All right, I'm done. You got one more? Or we out of
Yeah,
here?
I gotta do my title, man.
Oh, you
I
didn't
want to
make
know
it?
what I want you to know what you think of this.
He's gonna be gay. That's what I think.
It's
That's gonna make me think it's gay. Something gay. Is this gonna
no,
be
it's
something
your
gay about
people.
this?
Your people are
That doesn't. We're not immune to being gay.
your people are in getting involved here. So this popular BC park, like a really popular BC park, Joffre Parks, I'm sure you've heard of it, is closed to public to give First Nations time to connect with the land. How long are they closing it for, do you think?
2 weeks.
3 weeks to
3
give
weeks.
just to shut her down and only let the Indians in. I mean, do you have to show your Indian card? Like, how do you make sure that only certain types of people can arrive at this, can go visit this park? Like, you must have to turn a lot of people away. I mean,
I'm
these
assuming
parks
it's just for the local Indians. Is it next to some land, or I don't know. At least it's not.
You might be wondering,
dots.
what's with all the fuss?
At least it's what?
At least it's not dots.
How racist of you. So it says they need time to connect with the land. I mean, that's great, but I mean, maybe let everybody connect to the land. I don't know, Joffrey Park, or just give them all the land back. I mean, this is such a we're not
Just
a
let him
serious
in. Let him
country.
in for free for a few weeks.
To recognize the importance of the Pipizuku, how would you pronounce that one? Indian, Darren? Seven. Why they have a seven in the middle of the word? I mean, Pipi seven Yaku. What?
Pipia 7 yellow.
Okay. To the Lilwat Nation and Niquaqua, the park will be closed to recreational visitors and the general public from April 25th to May 16th. So we're right in the middle of that. BC Parks wrote in the statement, this period will provide exclusive space for the Lilwat Nation and Niquaqua to connect with the land. When the park is once again accessible to everyone, those over the age of 12 must reserve a free day use pass to enter. According to the political chief from that nation, Dean Nelson, he says BC Parks has worked with First Nations to build a new relationship based on mutual respect and the recognition of our Aboriginal title and rights. Joffre Park lies within the unceded territories of the Lilwat Nation and Niquaqua and is integral to who we are as Niquaqua and Little Nelson said. The establishment of Joffre Lakes Park has served to protect this unique and beautiful place from impacts of industrial activities. However, it has also disrupted our traditional use and access to these lands. Not everyone has been thrilled by the move to limit the access to the park. Political commentator and former BC United candidate Caroline Elliott, for example, pointed out that it could be the beginning of a slippery slope.
Fuss around the closure of Joffre.
Can you hear that? Okay, here we go.
Wondering, what's with all the fuss around the closure of Joffre Lakes Provincial Park? 2 years ago, two First Nations unilaterally shut down the park, one of the most popular parks in BC, excluding any non-Indigenous British Columbians from accessing it, right in the middle of peak season. The nations had no legal authority to do so, yet the BC government not only acquiesced, but actually sent park officials to turn non-Indigenous visitors away. They repeated the closure last year, and again this year, and likely next year and the year after that too. Now, it's easy to think, what's the harm in this? Well, it's important to understand that the Joffre Lakes closure was done on the basis of the park being within the nation's traditional territory, where title has been asserted but not established in the courts. So if we're now in a place where the mere assertion of title confers the right to prohibit public access to public spaces, then we all need to be aware that over 100% of BC's landmass is claimed as unceded traditional territory by one or more of the province's 200 plus Indigenous groups. That means we have to ask, what would prevent more closures like this, not just in other parks, but in relation to any other public lands? The reality is it's divisive, it sets a terrible precedent, and it's just plain wrong. One thing it isn't is complicated. BC's beautiful provincial parks belong to all British Columbians.
You
might be wondering.
What do you think?
I think BC's got all sorts of problems without having any treaties. That it's really could get weird over there.
I think it's going to get weird everywhere. I mean, Government-sanctioned racism. This is what the far left wants. Division, alienation, and hate. They thrive
What
on
they
it. I
should be
mean,
doing is coming up with treaties, but they don't want to do that in the modern world.
Tatanka, I'd say that's what most of their leaders want. They use it as a means of extortion. Their attitude then extends to the rest of their population, which is basically just a means of social poisoning. Or maybe it's Stockholm syndrome. Hard to tell because objective science is, for the most part, not allowed to be applied to the natives. It would apparently disrupt the never ending grafting operations. So, sorry, what were you saying?
BC should probably get to work on figuring out some treaties, but no one ever wants to have a talk about that. What are we doing? Where are the lines? What are we doing here? What are
And I
we?
mean, that's an interesting opportunity too, right? To
Because to be
maybe,
trying to do that now in Alberta and all these other places, you're glad you got them treaties. However they were signed, and it says that the territory is permanently ceded. So it's in BC you don't have that. In BC you got a can of worms that probably doesn't have to be a huge can of worms. I mean, you know what I mean? It's just that nobody wants to fucking deal with it. Sit down and give them some chunks and be done with it. You don't have the park. You have this chunk over here beside that, and
well, that's a good opportunity for them to assert some real ownership of the land, right? Not like the rest of the treaties now, right? When was the last treaty signed then? Do you know, like a long time
a
ago?
long time ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not so, but then who does that? I mean, the Indians can't just do that. You need to. Who does that? The king? Does the king have to be involved in that in our system? He might.
Well, that's part of the problem with this, right? Is it has to go all the way up to the top. So no, I mean it's got to go through the BC government and then the king's got to get involved. I mean, come on, as if that'll ever happen. Got to go through Carney first too. Like,
Yeah, I don't know where treaties come from. It's like a different world nowadays. Before you could just whip out a piece of paper. Some lord could just be like, ah.
I mean, they signed. I mean, they signed. The UK and the USA have already signed tariff agreements. I mean, I heard that that's a thing right before the king's going to come to